Welcome, everyone. This is Greg Rock, and on behalf of BPM Institute and Pallas Athena, I'd like to welcome you to today's roundtable on case management strategies and best practices, taking traditional BPM way beyond conventional workflow, routing, and collaboration. We're lucky enough today to have Lynn Hogue with us, who's the president of Pallas Athena America, and I'll give you a little more background on Lynn's experiences shortly, but just have a couple quick housekeeping items. As many of you know, our Roundtable series is one of the ways in which BPM Institute promotes knowledge sharing and networking amongst our members in the BPM community at large, and we do that through our website, our conference series, our training programs, and our publications. You can find more information on those on bpminstitute.org. We're lucky enough, as I mentioned, to have Lynn Hogue with us. Lynn brings more than 20 years of experience in the areas of compliance, enterprise content, and has been an industry executive through document management, process improvement initiatives, and prior to joining Pallas Athena, spent time at Superion, Easy Software, and Ixos. You may have also seen Lynn as a frequent speaker and presenter at various SAP and ASUG and industry symposiums, including our own conference series throughout the U.S., Brainstorm Conference Series. So, Lynn, I wanted to welcome you to today and appreciate Pallas Athena ongoing support of the BPM community and this webcast conference series that we've been featuring. This is kind of the second episode in the series that we've been focusing on. And more than their ongoing support, I also wanted to mention that Pallas Athena also participates on BPM Institute's Supplier Council, and we appreciate their insight and support and guidance on some of the content and things that we're featuring throughout the year. So without further delay, I'd like to turn things over to Lynn Hogue.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I'm very pleased to be with you today and to present this session on case management. I want to thank Greg and all the folks at BPM Institute for making this session possible. For those of you who might not be familiar with Pallas Athena, let me give you a quick snapshot of our company. We're a global company. Today we're represented in more than 30 countries around the world. We have more than 1,800 customers worldwide. We're one of the top vendors to provide a complete BPM suite. We've been a Deloitte Fast 50 company each and every year since 2002. We're ISO certified, and this year we're happy that we have been selected by Gartner as a cool vendor. As we look at case management, it might be interesting for our audience to know that Pallas Athena actually introduced the concept of case management first back in the mid-90s. As Mark Karamans from Gartner noted in one of his recent reports, and I quote, most BPMS suite products don't support a case management workload very well and lack the requisite capabilities to coordinate this more complex use case, end quote. He also says that enterprises need to understand the interplay between case management and BPMS products, and that's one of the things that we're going to do in today's session. So our agenda today is we'll show you the case management and how it provides significant time and money savings over traditional BPM approaches, how case management is changing how companies look at typical solutions. We'll also show you how it is much more easily set up and can control and modify complex processes without the typical time-consuming plan, do, check, act cycle that we're all familiar with in BPM. We'll also look at some of the examples of case management that exist today, even within your own organizations, that perhaps you never realized before. And we'll also actually show you a demonstration of the complete BPM Life-Cycle. Now, regardless of how you feel about the current economy, BPM, and more specifically case management, has the ability to help you and your organization meet many of your goals and objectives. Case management can help you to improve the quality in your products and services. It can help lower costs across many parts of your organization. Of course, it increases efficiency, and as more and more companies are looking for to gain a competitive advantage. The ROI that we've seen in implementation after implementation has been outstanding. And as I said, Pallas Athena is today sitting at more than 1,800 customers worldwide, so we have a lot of experience in this area. Today, this is the state-of-the-art in BPMS technology. It represents the complete BPMS life cycle from start to finish. So let me kind of walk you through it. Many of you in the audience might not be familiar with the first term, which is process mining, and let me explain. Process mining, as you may have seen in one of the other BPM Institute roundtables that we've provided, process mining is the ability to take customer data, that's log files, database information, data out of ERP or other legacy applications, and actually mine or reverse engineer, let's say, the process model automatically from the data. The result is a perfectly historically accurate process model produced in hours or days of work versus weeks and months of, sketching on a whiteboard. So the time-consuming savings and cost savings over the manual creation using traditional modeling tools is tremendous. For most BPMS solutions, they actually start at item number 2, and that's the traditional process modeling. Then we move to simulation and animation. Of course, then there's integration with third-party applications. There's business process adaptation, what we call business agility. And then the execution phase, which is where case management lives. And then at the very end of the BPM life cycle, we have business activity monitoring, or BAM for short. Now, once you understand the BPM life cycle, you can then examine the project life cycle. And these are the steps typically taken in the implementation and ongoing maintenance and deployment of BPM within your organization. It is the typical plan, do, check, act cycle. And around we go. We change and improve the process each time this cycle takes place. Now, regardless of which BPMS solution that you're familiar with, historically, everyone follows the same basic cycle. That is planning, doing, now we check it, then we act on it, we improve it, and then we start over again. As this slide lampoons, there's a big problem with the traditional project cycle and workflow that's involved as we all have come to know it. So the traditional BPM project life cycle is costly and time-consuming. It can take organizations weeks and typically months at each phase of the improvement cycle in which to make changes occur. We've seen organizations whose typical improvement cycle are as few as 1 to 2 releases per year. And this is a lot of time and money and lost opportunity. So we're going to show you a better way to do that. Today, organizations want and need to be more agile. They must be better able to adapt to changes and to take quick advantage of opportunities that can better benefit the business. For most companies who have already or who are now in the process of implementing BPM, slow and steady no longer wins the race. So the trick is to allow change to occur without forcing new process versions. So to make changes in the process during its execution or during runtime and not be forced to go back to the beginning, back to the drawing board, back to the whiteboard or back to the modeling phase in order to make simple changes to improve the operational efficiency. So these changes can be made by the business or they can be made by IT, and we call this true flexibility in process management. For many of you evaluating BPMS solutions, the concept of structured workflow is deep in BPM's history and heritage. So while some processes are easily streamlined and automated with structured process workflow, these processes must be fully defined at design time. And the BPMS takes firm control of each of the steps of the process. And users have virtually no choices based on the situation and their expert knowledge of the customer, of the situation, of the case, etc. And so while some solutions still offer exclusively structured workflow, they're slowly becoming extinct in the market. And with some of the consolidation that we've seen in the BPM industry in general recently, I suspect that these solutions won't be around much longer either. So here's a perfect example. The user in role A goes through a series of steps, and then the system moves the process to the next role, B, which goes through his or her steps in order, and so on until the process is complete. There's no possibility that the user in role A, let's say, recognizes the customer or the customer situation, sees valuable information on the screen, and within the case makes a determination to skip any of his or her steps. Likewise, the user in role B has no option to create a new step or based on the business case or even go back to and redo, let's say, step number 6 in the process. Those types of dynamics are really not possible within a structured workflow environment, and that's one of the big differences between pure BPM and case management. So, of course, the opposite of structured is unstructured. And in these types of processes, the process flow is really purely ad hoc. Exception is the rule, and these scenarios are rarely defined during design time. Now, Derek Mears, the founder of BPM Focus, has studied case management for many years and defines 2 types of case management scenarios. There's design time, and then there's runtime. And what Derek's conclusions really lead to is that in order to be truly effective, any BPMS solution must be capable of both. So to be truly effective, your BPMS solution must give you the ability to make changes to your case process both during the design time and during the runtime. Now, perhaps Bruce Silver, the founder of Bruce Silver Associates and an expert contributor here to the BPM Institute, probably said it best when he said that a case, like a conventional business process, involves a collection of activities or tasks. And the process from initiation to completion of the case is not easily constrained to a process diagram, certainly not one based on a single end-to-end orchestration, even with complex nesting and chaining logic. Another key point that Bruce makes is that which activities need to be performed in order to complete the case depends largely on the details of the instance. So typically, the case manager or perhaps any performer of the task in the case makes these decisions. So the rules, so to speak, are inside the user's heads, not codified in the explicit business rules that the system provides. And in my opinion, Bruce hits the nail on the head. So here we see some examples of case management in every marketplace. Case management lives within the oil and gas industry. There are applications in healthcare and consumer products, pharmaceuticals, banking, etc. And when people think of case management, there are a couple classic applications which immediately come to mind. The two that I see very often are insurance claims and mortgage loan applications. The interesting thing is that case management has many more less obvious applications, such as opening a new bank account or security badging processes, court and appeal processes, IT services. A very dynamic one is medical and scientific research, employee HR applications, help desks, compliance and auditing processes, etc. These also are very strong case management applications. And as I said, the key point is that the best case management environments are ones in which the case depends on the details of each instance, where the performer of the task in the case can make decisions and decide, so to speak, the rules of the case. So to expand on the case management metaphor, to give you a sense of how it is subtly different from traditional BPM workflow, the key differentiator is the ability to run multiple procedures against a given case. And the priority is with the case rather than with the process. So as an example where the information from the past, let's say who made what decision based on what information, and the flexibility to make informed decisions at the user level, provided that you have the right authorizations, of course, is absolutely indispensable. And here we get a first glimpse of what's called the case guide. Now, the case guide provides users or knowledge workers with a real-time view of the case. This is a huge departure from the traditional heads-down data entry BPM solutions of the past. So we see an overview of the entire case all on one screen. The various activities within the case, the data, and the timeline. Icons you see here, there are icons on the left, on the timeline, and to the right. So icons on the left of the timeline are steps to be performed in the future. Icons that are on the timeline are in the process of being updated or completed right now. And the icons to the right of the timeline have already been created or already been completed. You may also know that some are grayed out and some are not. So the non-grayed out icons are tasks which I as a user can perform, and the grayed out ones are tasks which others need to perform. And the goal here is to provide complete visibility at every stage of the process. And of course, because the case management system is constantly being updated, the status changes dynamically as steps are completed. And users see the entire process and, most importantly, where they fit in the process. Another important point is that it should be possible for cases from the same process design to be distributed in different ways in each department or regional office, as an example. It should be possible at an operational level to adapt the criteria by which distribution takes place without this resulting in a different process design. And finally, it should be possible to allocate work to employees in different ways. So one department, for example, could work on the principle of a communal work tray, while others with the same processes work on the principle of direct allocation or distribution to individual employees. And any robust BPMS case management solution must give you this kind of flexibility. Now, many of the processes that we consider to be strictly sequential are actually a combination of structured processes and case management representation. And this means that it is essential that the control is not rigid. the employee should have freedom enough to exercise control within limitations defined in the process design. And I'll tell you, it is, from experience, it is impractical to model all of the exceptions explicitly during design, and yet this is essential for most common BPM solutions still today. In practice, this problem leads to very complicated process design that unfortunately is still not able to handle all of the exceptions that occur. So the famous 80-20 rule means that 80% of the cases can be handled in 20% of the time. That's fine, but this also means that the remaining 20% of the cases will then require 80% of the time, and this is neither practical nor efficient. In another recent case management study that Gartner did, they noted that at a lower level, each case status has a list of deliverables that are defined and some that are ad hoc. Each deliverable follows its own process and progression. The case management team has to reconcile these sub-processes, as they're called, across the deliverables and consolidate them at a case level. There is no fixed sequence between diverse activities or diverse deliverables. The connections between activities are preconditions, that is, they are waiting on certain activities or deliverables that have reached a certain status. So processes usually have a limited number of statuses, including creation, prep, review, approval, closing the case, and archiving as an example. So what have we seen in that knowledge worker? With proper authorization, that knowledge worker needs to be able to add new processes to the case during runtime. The process model cannot possibly anticipate all of these permutations in advance and not during the design time. And case management requires both structured and unstructured processes controlled by the system and the knowledge worker. And the hard part for most is that these new processes need to be added on the fly. But you still want the system to execute those processes. You want the system to track the deadlines for those tasks, to monitor case status from end to end, and even measure performance. So what we've also learned is that when selecting a BPMS, you need to look at both the design and the runtime abilities, because they are different. And don't assume that basic workflow and routing are sufficient to meet your needs. We strongly suggest to maintain an organizational framework of your process during the design time, but don't try to build every exception possible up front. It just doesn't work. And looking for iterative development at design time process. We suggest empowering the knowledge workers throughout the process and to make more ongoing changes versus few major changes. The results will be a more capable solution to meet your needs, and you'll receive the benefit and the ROI that BPM promises. So what I'd like to do now is to actually show you a BPM Life-Cycle, and we're going to walk through a scenario live, which will show you the process from end to end, and I'll explain as we go through. All from the presentation, process mining is the ability to take data, customer data, from log files, legacy systems, ERP systems, etc., and automatically create the underlying process model associated. So here what we're doing is we're importing a simple CSV file that we got from a customer. We're going to validate that the columns are, formatted appropriately. There are several bits of data that are usually required, and they are a unique identifier. That could be a case number, it could be a patient number, SOC number, employee number, or some type of unique identifier. A process step, a description of what the step was, and then also a date and timestamp. Of course, the logs could also have user information, and that user information would be used later to help us construct a social network. So here the system is going to automatically create for you the process diagram. Here we see a description of what it looks like for 50% of the cases. So 50% of the time, the cases move directly straight through the process. Here we're adjusting the percentage at the bottom from, let's say, 100% to, let's say, 80%. And what's typical is that, between 80% and 100% is really where the complexity in the process lies. So again, this is process mining, and it creates for you automatically the process diagrams that typically analysts or users would have to create by hand, starting at the whiteboard, sketching out the process, and then transcribing that into a BPM process modeling tool. So from there, once we've created the actual process model, we can create a variety of different animations. And what animations do is they pour the data back through the model. And here you see little colored balls, which are cases or instances, flowing through the process. And you see that some go to the left, some go to the right. They move through the process at different speeds. And there's also a legend on the right, which corresponds by color to the colored balls that give you, let's say, the number of cases that run through, the average throughput times, and things like that. So we can pan and we can zoom in, and we can see dynamically what's happening in every step of the process. The little bars to the right of the bars that you see there also give you information as far as the quantity or frequencies of cases that are running through. So of course, we want to get to this point quickly so that we can spend most of our time improving the process, not just modeling the as-is process, but actually improving it, right? And so we then take the model that has been created from the process mining step and import it into our modeling environment, which here is called BPM 1 Design. BPM 1 Design has all of the robust, modeling features that you would expect. And here what we're doing on the right is we're creating a number of roles, and we're going to link these roles together. So these are users. We have a user and a manager and a supervisor, etc. And we have a palette of different tools like triggers and activities and creating processes and data elements, etc. So we're going to enhance the model which was created from process mining here in the design environment. So we're adding the roles. We're now going to add some data elements to it. These data elements could be information that perhaps you want to capture in a forms fill-in application where a user would type in information, or a database could import that information automatically. So we're just adding additional roles and rules and elements to the existing process. And here you see that we have a variety of different properties, and we can select properties for these particular data elements, which ones perhaps might be mandatory fields, We can add different activities now to the process model because we notice perhaps that there are some bottlenecks in the original model, so now we're going to create perhaps some additional activity steps. Again, we have a quite robust tool, so you can take a look at different views. Here's a process view, which again shows you more and more information. It shows other data elements and roles and how they are nested. Here we have a swim lane type of view, and see by role which users are involved in which step of the process. So here in this example, we just moved everybody to one particular role. So again, the whole idea is that we capture the information very quickly using the process mining. We then import the information from the mining model into the design environment. And then from there, we move it into, after the enhancements have been made, we move it into the execution environment. And of course, the execution environment is where all the case management capabilities exist. So we're going to show you some of those. So we're going to select from a work list some of the running cases. We'll select one in particular. We'll go ahead and start the case. And here we see the case guide that we talked about in the presentation. So this particular user is starting the case, and they see on the left the timeline with the different icons that are, again, showing where the items are or the tasks are in history. To the left are items in the future. You see as work is being done, they move to the timeline, which is work in progress. And the items to the right and the ones that are checked off, as you see, are items that have been completed. Again, noting that you've got a forms fill-in on the right, very simple design tool to create them. And the user moves through the process very, very easily. Again, one of the major differentiators of structured workflow and case management is the ability to skip and redo portions or steps of the process. So if a user, for instance, missed information, they can go back and they can make changes to it quickly and easily. Here in this application, which is a mortgage loan application, the system also generates automatically a variety of different forms and also a number of different documents which can be used for outbound purpose. So the system takes care of all of the behind-the-scenes calculations, etc., and the user doesn't really have to worry about it. All of the standard forms and letters, acceptance or rejection letters, etc., which can be boilerplated, are easily created by the system, and the user can concentrate on actually the work that needs to be done. So again, the user sees an overall view of the case from start to finish. They see where they fit within the case, and they see where work is being done, where work has already been completed, and what work yet needs to be done. And this is, again, one of the major advantages of case management. And we're going to quickly come to an end here. Again, here you see one of the standard letters that can be created with information that's filled in dynamically by the system without having any user intervention. So we've shown you that from beginning to end, starting with raw data from the client, you can mine the data, automatically create the process models using process mining, import those created models into a design environment, enhance them, create sub-processes, streamline those processes, and then once they have been improved, move that immediately into an execution environment using all of the case management tools that we talked about earlier. From BPM Institute. Thank you.
All right, Lynn, thank you very much. Well, we appreciate you coming down and lending your expertise to the members of our community and sharing with them the capabilities of your solutions. I still always leave the demos that you guys have appreciating the visualization, which I think is very powerful part of your tool and part of the process mining capabilities. But the case management, I think, is really of great value to members of our community and organizations that are looking to control and modify these complex processes. So thank you very much for taking everybody through that. Just a couple housekeeping notes as we wrap up today's session. As we mentioned on the website, the folks at Pallas Athena have been gracious enough to raffle off a free process mining session, which has a $5,000 value. And we will reach out to the lucky individual with that following the webcast. And we will also have this webcast archived on bpminstitute.org in case you'd like to share it with any of your colleagues. Last but not least, I wanted to mention that our members that are located in the Washington, D.C. or New York area can have an opportunity to come out and meet Lynn in person and the rest of the staff from Pallas Athena, as Brainstorm DC will be held in September, the week of September 21st. And Lynn will also be with us at our Brainstorm New York event in November, the week of November 2. So I'd like to thank everybody for your time today. Hope you enjoyed the rest of the summer that's quickly waning on us. And we look forward to hosting you again in an upcoming webcast or perhaps seeing you in Washington, D.C. Thank you again, everyone. And Lynn Hogue with Pallas Athena, thank you for your time, Lynn.
Thank you, Greg.